Alright, today we're going to be looking at creating a drawing of the Fennec Fox. This is a drawing that I have been doing with a lot of my students in 5th grade. I have the rules up here. I want you to pause it and read that. I'll be going over those rules as we draw this. Up till now, if you've been following along primarily online, or even if you're my student and you're doing this at home, you want just some extra work to do, get ahead, or keep your skills sharp. You're moving away from silhouette block-ins to actually working with your first animal, and this is the first animal, the Fennec Fox. So the first thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be using site size, so you'll have a printed out reference in class, or if you have a tablet like I do in front of me, get that tablet set up, and you want to measure the width. And I have a paintbrush. I also have like a bicycle spoke, something straight that I can easily measure distances with. The benefit is that it removes a lot of the guesswork. Drawing is hard enough, so doing things in site size means that you'll be drawing things that can be that are comparatively the same size, right next to each other. And while we start with paper, eventually you can move over doing portraits and still life and even plein air paintings, where you set up your artboard to the left or the right and your piece of paper or your canvas right next to it, and you have the same size. Comparative measurement, literal measurements. This width of this Fennec Fox is going to be the same width that I put on the piece of paper, and I'm going to start making my envelope. And the first was coming out of the nose and going along the slope of his head to where the ear was, and I measured that. And then I'm guessing where the tail is going to be. It's going to be lower than where the nose is. And now I'm gonna put long sweeping lines in, and I have a sharp pencil. I'm using an HB. I think a B or an HB is a great pencil to use because you're gonna get a nice dark line and you won't press too hard on your paper, and you don't want to damage your paper because once you damage your paper, it's like a groove, and you can get stuck in a groove, literally, and it's hard to correct. So you want to treat your paper gently. And here I'm continuing on with the envelope, and I'm marking that bottom line is a shadow, and then the front foot is actually up in the air. And so these little short marks that I'm creating here are called measurement ticks, or just measurement lines. I call them ticks. And these little tick marks basically tell me what am I looking at. Because if you do a drawing and you don't know what you're looking at, your accuracy will be off. So you need to know what you're looking at and where that line is going to be in your drawing. Alright, the envelope is coming together pretty well, and my next step at this point is to measure all of those lines from the tip of the nose to the foot, and I'm correcting that tick mark. That's the distance. Okay, so now I'm going from the front foot to the collection of the middle feet, and I'm measuring the back of the heel. That angle tells me that I'm measuring the back of the heel. So now I go from there to my next measurement over, which is going to be the back of the foot, and I'm putting in those lines as mental notes. They are not accurate, they're just there to let me know that I'm coming along pretty well, and these shorter measurements should fit into my envelope. If they don't fit into the envelope, put them down, and you're gonna have to, like a collapsed trapezoid, move it to different angles so it fits the shape that you want. And a couple more marks, middle of the drawing, where I guess the belly was, and now I'm trying to figure out where the back of this fox is, where the back starts sloping across his rump and down towards his tail. Where is that line? And that's my estimate. And now I'm measuring from the back foot diagonally. In map making, they used to make these maps that with the process known as triangulation. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm just measuring more points to make sure that my triangles line up. And if they don't, then I just go around with these lines until they make sense. So it's kind of a mathematical approach. I've found that boys who didn't like drawing before and girls I should say, or anyone who really liked math but didn't like drawing because they didn't think they were creative, really thrive with this environment, because suddenly art becomes more mathematical and a much more approachable way to create things. And whether you agree that it's just a method that's nice to be able to get things out, or you see it as mathematical, your skill gets better and your hand-eye coordination gets better. So I'm trying to figure out where the back of the fox is, and it looks like it goes through his eye. So that's a long line that's really helpful for me in my drawing, and part of that line will be erased. So these lines now, as I move into the block in, my envelope is done. And I'm now going around the outside, creating a silhouette like we've done before. But I'm going to start looking at some of the long shapes. That ear comes into the body. There's a shadow shape where part of the head and part of his back, part of his tail, and part of his rear legs are in the sunlight. And there is a visual difference. So those are lines that I'm going to have to include too in this block in, so I know where to shade dark and where to shade lighter. And I'm really working on the top here, trying to figure out where these lines go. The ear comes in a bit and then drops down. There's the chin, it comes in, and then it looks like it comes down similar, not quite a parallel line to my outer envelope, and then it juts out to the foot, to that tick mark. So that's where that tick mark comes in handy. And everything I'm doing now is a bit of a guess, because I'm not pressing hard, I'm not damaging my paper, I can easily erase and move things around. And everything you're doing right now is a guess. Everything you're doing is just, with every time you go around this block in, you're gonna get a little bit closer to realism, a little bit closer to a more recognizable shape, in this case the fox. And there's the back of the front leg, cleaning it up. The foot is on that shadow line. It looks like a horizontal line from here, but it's actually at a diagonal. If you look at my tablet on the left-hand side, the shadow line is not parallel with the edge of my tablet. It's actually dipping down to the lower left-hand corner. So it's hard to see in my drawing because I didn't show the top and bottom of the paper, but I'm leaving that line in because it is also helpful as a shadow line. Shadows are part of the object, the casted shadow onto the ground. And the front of him is looking pretty good. For her. This desert fox, also known as the Fennec Fox. And I chose this guy because he's very angular. And he's kind of a, he's a cute little creature that I thought would be fun for 5th graders to jump into and be able to take home and show their parents and be like, look, I know how to draw now. And after doing about a month to 6 weeks of block-ins and learning how to do the shapes, this is the first long-term project that I assign. And it takes anywhere from 2 to 3 days. Each class is 45 minutes long. And I normally only see my students 3 times a week, so it can take a week, 3 classes. And I want them to get their lines down and demonstrate all aspects of the block-in, which would include the shadow shapes and the terminators, the cast shadow. Alright, so I've got all 4 legs in, and there's a guess to where the tail is. I'm looking at the tail here, and the tail has a dark patch. That's just this guy. He has, that's how his fur is on him, and I'm gonna leave that out. But those dark areas can throw you off a bit. So again, just trying to rely on the silhouette. And I like the shape, so now I'm going around my block in again, and I'm starting to refine shapes a bit more. I'm using a pretty standard eraser stick, tough stick, I think. Just a couple bucks. You can find any one of these mono Tombow mono erasers. They're great. As you get into more detail, we'll be moving into the mono 0 to help you draw. Okay, so I'm looking at this head, and there's the triangle for the ear. And then there's the shadow break, which is actually a form break, because you have the top of the ear that's in the light, and then the bottom of the ear, which is all in the shadow. And there's like a top and a bottom of the ear. Kind of like a curved tortilla chip. You have one side that's up on the sun, the other side that's underneath. And so I'm trying to figure out how that form lies. Looks good. And something feels off to the chin here. So, there's a temptation to curve lines, and don't do it. Resist the urge to get a curved line in there, because once you start using curved lines, they're really hard to fix. You want to rely on your tick marks and where these points are, because things will move. Things can always be just a little bit more accurate, and at some point you're gonna like your drawing, and I really would urge you to stay away if you're watching these online. If you are a student of mine, I don't want to see any curved lines whatsoever for the first year until 6th grade. I really want to see confident, long, straight lines. I want to know that you're able to control and manipulate those lines around to do what you want to do. Alright, so I'm confident with the block in, and I am erasing my envelope. I'm drawing upright. My paper is at a 45-degree angle. When we're at school, I have guys work on easels. And working on an easel or a drawing table, it needs to face you, because if you work on the kitchen table or a counter that's just flat, your drawings can be skewed, and your brain will try to make it right and accurate and symmetric. And then when you hold it up so that it's on the wall and you step back, it can look really funky. So really you want your work facing you. Okay, so I'm working on the tail now, and there's a separation of the hips and going into the tail, and I'm going to omit that black area. It feels good. I come back to the top of the head, in front of the head, and a lot of this is just really darting my eyes back and forth. My nose should be, and is, right between my two things that I'm looking at here, the piece of paper and the tablet. My nose is right between. Okay, there you go. That was my my starting eraser on the left. Now I'm moving on to my mono 0. They're a little bit more expensive, but they are a wonderful investment, because pretty soon you're going to get really clean short lines to help you clean up your sweeping lines, and you're going to be able to control your drawings even better. The temptation to want to put all the face detail in is really, really great, and I will tell you to avoid it, because you can accidentally get your drawing done really well and knock it out of the park, but not really have a method to recreate it, and then your next drawing won't be great. But if you measure everything and you rely on just straight lines and measurement, triangulation, you can consistently make all your drawings look good. So now that the blocking has come to a point, I'm ready to put that face in. It's in. And once again, I'm going around looking at all the forms. Another thing I tell my students often is when you're drawing something, it's not uncommon for your brain to tell you what you're drawing, but your brain is wrong. For example, you could say, I'm working on a foot, but what you know of a foot isn't what you see, and the lines that you're drawing are really weird looking. They don't look like a foot. But you have to rely on your eyes and tell your brain to just draw what you see and not what you think you see, because what you think you see is often incorrect. Alright, going over the lines, making them a little bit darker. Don't confuse darker with pressing harder. You can always use a darker pencil. In this case, a darker pencil would be like a B or a 2B. But I would really encourage you to use an HB or a B. I actually really like doing my block-ins now with a 2H or an H. Really light lines, really faint. But in the beginning, I really wanted to see what I was drawing and feel that weight. So I think an HB is a great pencil to use, and you can do basic shading with it. It doesn't stain the paper. A 2B, once you start getting into the darker pencils, B, 2B, 3B is even darker than that, you run the risk of, even if you press moderately hard, you can stain the paper and it never really comes out. And moving my pencil around without drawing gives me an opportunity to measure things. As my face is moving, it's not moving at all. My nose is right between my two drawings and I'm darting my eyes back and forth. And if I keep my head perfectly still as I dart my eyes back and forth looking at my reference more than my drawing, eventually the images in my brain will overlap and I can start seeing where things need to go and how they can move. Alright, so I'm getting really close to being done here. And in fact, I like it. This is a really good drawing. There's the shadow. The shadow comes out a bit more. I've got my shadow shapes, and that angle from where the tail falls to the ground tells me that that's my angle of light. And so I'm going to include this light source direction because that prepares me for the next step, which is shading. So congratulations, guys. This is your first drawing. I hope you enjoy this tutorial. I would do this a couple times a year just to see how your skills are. It's a good benchmark to be able to come back and say, oh look, I've gotten better, or oh look, I've gotten faster, or oh wow, I've gotten worse. I haven't been drawing much. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.